Okay, just gonna keep that in. So, whether a show continues on for a long period of time, each season of the show has one thing in common, and that is a final episode. Now, whether if it is a season finale or a series finale, especially if it's a reality show, it always comes down to a certain few, the finalists. Now, in Total Drama's case, there are multiple different types of winners and runner-ups. And what I mean by that is the fact that each country that Total Drama takes place in has different winners. I mean, in one country you could get Owen as a winner, in one country you can get Gwen as a winner. So, instead of doing a winner's ranking, I'm going to take it upon myself to rank every single Total Drama finalist, from worst to best. I mean, if you haven't seen my last few videos on Total Drama, I think you might be new here. But I always like to go worst to best. So, I'm going to list a few rules before we get started with the video. So first things first, for Total Drama World Tour and Total Drama Redonkulous Race, this is just going to be my rule. But I am going to be including the third places. Now, they're not going to have high placements, okay? Even though they might have some of the best games, probably not, in the series, they are going to be lower because they don't have an alternate ending. And they don't have a win, because they end up getting booted out right before the true final challenge. But I am going to place them in because they did compete in the final episode. Next up, I'm going to be basing them off of their gameplay. But not only that, I'm going to be looking at their season. So any season that came before it, any season that came after it, will not count. So that means if a person places first or second in one season, and then gets booted third their next, I'm only going to be taking a look at that season that they competed on. Next up is going to be my own personal preference. Now, everyone has a different opinion, and if you have a different winner that should be higher or should be lower, I respect that. But this is my personal preference on how I feel like the ending went, and how the person played. And any more rules? Oh yeah, and if there is a winner or finalist that is lower, I am going to be taking a look and say if I want to replace them with another option or not. Now, I am going to be saving that for finalists my own way for a future video. But until then, let's get on with the rankings. Alright, and coming in at last place at number 16, I mean, kind of in third place is it's Cody. I mean, by far, this one is not even close for counting in third places. And this is for good reason, too. I mean, Cody's game, for a watcher standpoint, a reality show enjoyer standpoint, and even my personal preference, is bad. Like, just bad. First off, Cody is rarely the main focus in many episodes within the pre-merge. Within that, Cody's strategy throughout the game was to focus on getting rid of Sierra, who, newsflash, was willing to risk her game just so then Cody can make it further. And he tried to get rid of her. That takes out a huge shield. Not only that, besides his strategy game, his social game was probably his best aspect. But that really isn't saying much as to where he's basically around Sierra 24/7. Or Sierra's around him 24/7. And along with that, his gameplay is, well, lackluster. Now, I promised I wasn't going to focus on any previous seasons, but even taking a look at his previous seasons, he doesn't really do much. except focus on trying to be a ladies' man. Now, is he a deserving finalist? No. No. I dare say there are better options within the season that could have fit that role. I dare say Sierra should have even been third place. I feel like that would have been a more deserving spot. And not only that, we would have had the top 3 best players in the season by a gameplay standpoint in the final 3. But for Cody doesn't really deserve it. I mean, he's literally carried through multiple challenges, only does good in less than half of those challenges. Now, while he is a good aspect for Team Amazon, I do feel like that if they knew how weak he was and Sierra wasn't on the team, Cody more than likely goes home and is left in the the minority of the game. Do I feel like Cody would have won a season? Probably not, unless it's a redonkulous race style season. But Cody doesn't deserve to be in the finale, guys. Sorry, Cody fanboys, but Cody comes in last place here. Alright, and now we're on to a person who actually did make the final 2. And for me, this is honestly the weakest and, to me, the worst finalist. Not counting Cody, if we're not counting third places, this finalist would be last. And that finalist to me is Beth. Now, I don't have a problem with Beth, but I do think that her character is a wee bit boring, honestly. Now, for me, Total Drama Action is a season of robbed potential. I mean, we have players stepping up. We have people coming in left and right. But the thing with this is the finale kind of ruins it. I mean, I'm okay with Duncan being a finalist, even though I feel like he should have been an island finalist instead of this. But Beth? Why? I mean, all throughout the season, this season was carried by Justin, Duncan, Harold, Lindsay, and Courtney. Like, those are the people who carried the season. And Beth gets to the end? What? I mean, Beth does hardly anything in the pre-merge except follow Justin and Lindsay around. And she's normally second in command, which should mean she's higher up on this list. But no. I mean, Lindsay is second in command to Justin, but she at least takes up a leadership role. Beth, she doesn't do any of that. Now, she does have a few good performances in the Final 5 and the Final 4, but even then she's barely even the main focus. And even then, they just add in a weird new storyline for her. Now, there are a few positives I have over Cody's game for her. First off, her immunity run. I mean, although I feel like her endgame could have been stronger for the player she was, and could have been a lot more interesting, honestly, she does have 2 immunity wins, and she does do her best at a few comps. Next up is the fact that she, just like Cody, got no votes in her season. I mean, she went on a spree, gained 0 votes at every single elimination. But that doesn't mean that you have a perfect game. And all because you don't get people to vote for you doesn't mean that no one would vote for you. And that just paints you as more of a floater. And the final thing is, I feel like she was in the majority for a lot longer, and not only that, she was a much more valuable asset to the team. I mean, even in the episodes on where she's not even the main focus, she is seen to have some sort of control of what she's doing, and she knows her way around a few comps. But if we're taking a look at her as a finalist, she would win a jury vote because of her ties with a few people, but that's basically the most positive thing I can say for Beth. she's still a really bad written character, a really boring character in my eyes. And to me, easily could have been replaced with Harold or even Lindsay. Actually, no, she should have been replaced with Lindsay in my eyes. Sorry, Beth, but you come in at number 15th. Okay, so to me, this finalist is honestly very boring. But if we're focusing on her game, I honestly think that she has a better game than Cody and Beth. I mean, she was in the game for a lot longer. She did her part in every single challenge she could. And that person I'm talking about is Skye. Now, before I get into why she's this low, I just want to say that the first time I went through Total Drama Cocktail Island, I didn't even know they had an alternate ending for the season. Yeah, when you don't even know there's an alternate ending for the person who's the runner-up of the season, that is not setting the bar too high. But anyways, on to Skye. Now, Skye, I honestly think that she played a pretty decent game. I mean, she was always very physical in challenges and always had, well, not always, but did have good relations with people. Especially with Dave. Until it got fucked up. But anyways, moving on. I honestly think that this final four could have been fixed. To me, Skye is, I'd say, a worthy opponent, but I don't really know for her. Mainly, to me, her character doesn't really flourish off of athletic jock who had conversations with Dave. I mean, that's basically her whole character. I mean, you take Tyler, turn him into a female, but get rid of all of his comedy, and that's Skye right there. I mean, I don't really have a lot to say. I mean, she's very physical, but when you take a look at all the finalists, there are better physical options. Now, the positives I could say, besides their more physical options, is the fact that Skye would be a good finalist. That is, if it was on any other season or against anyone else. Who would I personally swap her out with? I'd probably swap her out with Max or Sammy, probably. But I'm going to try and save that for another video. Overall, Skye places here, and I don't really have a lot to say about it. And now we get to the finalist. In comparison to the last three, is one of my favorite characters. Now, this season in particular, I honestly feel like he didn't really deserve it. And he has gotten a lot of hate for it, and that character is Mike from Total Drama All-Stars. Now, I can understand why people hate him as a finalist. I mean, the whole Mal situation comes into play, saying how he doesn't deserve it, but I don't really hate Mike as a finalist. I mean, I honestly think that Mike is the best character from the second-gen cast in my eyes. Now, that's just my opinion. Scott is a better player. Zoe was even a better player that season, but if we had to take a look at this season for Mike, he doesn't really accomplish a lot game-wise. That's all Mal. And if Mike was always Mal, and he got to the finale, that would have been impressive. That actually would have been a good finale. Good versus evil. Two rivals going at it. But Mike and Mal are the same people. That's kind of where the contingency between this comes in and why Mike gets so much hate. Now, for me, I have him high because I didn't really hate his story arc throughout All-Stars all too much. Like, I didn't mind it, and it could have been better, but I don't completely and utterly hate it. But if we're talking about how this season should have ended, I don't think Mike deserves to be in the finale. But he's above the other two, or three, mainly because his character is more interesting and I was more invested. But I prefer Zoe's ending, as you guys can see. Alright, and now we're slowly transitioning from the finalists I don't like to the finalists that I am okay with. Now, by okay with, I mean that I like these finalists, but there could have been better options. This will go from this number all the way to, I believe, 7. And starting off this portion, let's get to, unfortunately, the other third place team that made the finale, and that is the Ice Dancers from the Redonkulous race. Now, over time, I have grown to love the Ice Dancers. I loved the Ice Dancers from the first second I saw them, but I didn't know what to expect from them. I didn't know they were going to be villains. I didn't know Jose was going to be the more villainous of the two. And that kind of led to them being one of my favorite antagonists of the season and of the show's history. But judging Redonkulous race teams and judging normal Total Drama standards is actually quite difficult because they don't really have similar challenges and they don't have voting eliminations. And many strategies come with sabotage. But for the Ice Dancers case, they were probably the best team in the season. From point 1 of the season, they were completely in the front, only having their lowest placement being in the bottom 2, which didn't come until near the midway point of the season. Now, the Ice Dancers have had the most first places out of any team. So, I honestly think that they have had the best shot of being the best team in Redonkulous race. But if it was a vote, they wouldn't last long. And even though they're the best ranked team, the only reason why they're this low instead of, being further down the list, hell, I honestly think they would have gotten 7th if they would have made the final 2. But as it stands, unfortunately, they are left as a third place team. And even though that sucks, I do like the other 2 finalists. And if you guys are asking, they would be in the same placement of where they are, with the Ice Dancers being at number 7. So, that's all I have to say about the Ice Dancers. Really wish they would have made it to the finale. And now we get to my first finalist that I prefer over the other one. Or the ending I prefer over the other ending. Now, as a character, I like this character. I actually think he is one of the more entertaining characters in his season. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he is one of the best. That's why I have him this low. And that character is Shawn from Total Drama Cocktail Island. Now, Shawn, for me, is one of the more entertaining characters, and has a similar aspect to his girlfriend, Jasmine, where he's practically the leader of the team, has nature instincts, and does a good job leading his team. But that does lead to a huge downfall. Shawn isn't really a person to be controlling or a major asset to the game. While he did make it to the finale, he did not make a huge impact. Hell, sometimes he's even the butt end of a lot of jokes. But I do prefer him over Skye, and for the sole reason that Shawn did have to get his way to the end. I mean, he did make bonds with Jasmine. He sacrificed himself for Jasmine in the first merge comp. He took down multiple Chris's in Scarlet Fever. And he even won the last 2 immunities, which got him to the finale. Now, for me, Shawn's game is a mixed bag. I like his game, I like him as a character, but I honestly don't think he would have made the finale if it was my way. If it was my way, I would have had Jasmine make it. Mainly just because I feel like Jasmine was a more formidable force in the season. And for her to be the one to take down Scarlet... Wait, not Scarlet. Sugar, I honestly think that would have been a perfect way to cap off her arc towards the finale. But as it stands, Shawn is a good character, pretty good finalist, but I do wish that he was a little bit better. And now we move on to the next team. And there's 2 times on where this is going to happen on this list, on where, with a season, the 2 finalists go back to back. And I kind of spoiled this with the Ice Dancers, and these 2 can be interchanged. But if we're looking at a pure seasonal aspect, this team should be higher than the next team. And that team is the Cadets. Now, I don't mind the Cadets. I actually think the Cadets are one of the best teams of the season. And I actually found them quite entertaining. But that's when I talk about their gameplay. I actually like their gameplay. Now, to me, it's hard to judge the redonkulous race in comparison to the other Total Drama seasons. Because there aren't voting eliminations. There's just challenges and last to finish challenges. So, how would I base them? I honestly would say that in terms of how they placed, they would probably be in the top 3. Top 3 or top 5, easily. And I'm going to get to this with the next placement too, but I feel like for them, they just mellowed out in different areas. Like in the beginning, they were in the front runners, and then all of a sudden they just fell off course to the back end of the pack. They were never a team that mellowed down into the middle, especially once the finale started to get underway. They were always featured in an episode in a good light, or in just the limelight in general. Now, there are some negatives, and that is the fact that they survived more non-eliminations than any other team. And to me, that's kind of a problem. Because it kind of shows that they were going to make it a lot further. Now, they could have gone out 4th, they could have gone out 3rd, but I am happy with them being finalists. I actually like them as a team, and I wouldn't mind seeing them come back for another season. Maybe even a Winners at War type of season. But overall, I prefer the next Winners a little bit more. And now why am I even trying to hide it? The next one are the Surfers. Now, when I started the Cadets, I end up saying that in a sense, the Cadets should be higher than the Surfers, and I'm just going to get it out of the way right now. The Surfers are the only finalists to return in the same season and make it to the end. Now, to a lot of people, that's a bad thing. And in terms of normal seasons like Survivor and Big Brother, if a person makes it to the end after being eliminated, that's understandable. And I dare say that these guys, in the normal sense of the list, should be lower. But that's where I come in. To me, I always loved the Surfers. I think Brody is a good pairing for Jeff, and I've always wanted to try and see on what they could do with Jeff if he got to a finale. I mean, after all, he's only been in 2 seasons before this, and the closest he's gotten before this is Total Drama Island. Now, unlike the Cadets, they weren't just mellowed out side characters that either mellowed out into the middle or mellowed out into the front. They were front runners for a good portion of the game, especially at the end. Now, they did have their slip-ups on where they did get in the bottom half of the game, but I do feel like that with their game, they recovered perfectly. I mean, they went from a team I think people expect to make it farther to a team that people wanted to actually see win, especially when they came back. And they were actually my pick to win. Now, Do I think that they are deserving finalists? Yes. Do I think that there could have been a better team? For both of them, yes. But I do like the finale that we got. And the Surfers versus the Cadets, you can switch these out and I would be fine with that. But for me, I'm playing the Surfers over the Police Cadets. Okay, so the next finalist, I actually had a hard time placing him on this list. Now, there's actually a good reason why, but I'll just let it speak for itself as I start to talk about the character. And that character is Lightning. Now, Lightning is, or was one of my favorites on Revenge of the Island. And he was a good comedy character, he was a good physical character, and he was really good at challenges. And not only that, his finale performance is amazing. But why do I have him at number 8? Well, not only was he not in a huge power position in the game, but the main reason why I have him at number 8 is because of 2 reasons. First off is who he's facing, and that was Cameron. Now, I personally like Cameron, and I'll get more onto that later on in the list. But the other reason is his heel turn at the end. Lightning was never really a hero, and I think we can all agree with that when we take a look back at Revenge of the Island. I mean, he was ambitious, ruthless, but he never really seemed like a villain. He never really seemed like a hero either. But then he just turns heel. He becomes a lot more cocky, he becomes a lot more self-insured, and he becomes more of a bully character. But what about the rest of his game? Was he a worthy finalist? Yes and no. Yes, he was a worthy finalist because of how his game went. I mean, he was the last original member on his team when he got to the merge. He attended practically every single elimination. And besides Cameron and I'm pretty sure Zoe, he was the only character to not receive a single vote. But no, because with this season, besides Stacy, Dakota, and even though Dakota could be a good finalist for that season, I honestly do believe that there were better options. Like, if we would have gotten Cameron versus Brick or Commander Zoe versus Cameron, that would have been awesome. But I do feel like that there were also good options for him too. Like him versus Zoe, him versus Joe, or even him versus Mike. Or even him versus Scott in a villain versus villain challenge. So, what I think of Lightning, I think he's a good character. But I do prefer the other finalists over him. Okay, now, this next character is kind of similar to Lightning, on where I didn't know where to place her. But unlike Lightning, I prefer her over the other finalist. I think she was one of the best players of the season, and I feel like she gets too much hate for being a character. And that character, if you can't tell by my hints, is Zoe from Total Drama All-Stars. Now, I've always liked Zoe. I'm just going to be honest, I've always liked Zoe. I think she's a well-written character. I've always been invested in all of her storylines, especially the one in All-Stars. Except for a few episodes. But why do I have her so high, and why do I prefer her over Mike's ending? Well, first things first, and the obvious, she was in the game more than Mike. Second, I actually think Zoe might be the player of the season. Now, granted, for which character I prefer, I do prefer characters like Scott, Alejandro, Gwen, Courtney, and even on certain occasions, it's Mal and Mike. And I do think that there could have been a better finale, like Courtney versus Scott, Cameron versus Courtney. Yes, I think that actually would have been good. Or the one I actually predicted from the start, Gwen versus Scott. But I am happy with seeing Zoe win. I think she was very deserving. She was a very physical competitor. And she was never really in a bad position. And the only times I could see her going home would have been episode 1 or episode 3. And episode 3 would have been for her costing her team the win. Besides that, she was good throughout the whole merge. And even in the pre-merge, she was good. Now, she is kind of written badly, and I will be honest there, she was kind of written badly and dumber this season. But I don't put that past her. I mean, they wanted to try and do something new with Mal, and I do kind of see that they had this plan from the beginning. But I don't take that away from her. Zoe's game is one of the best I've ever seen played by a Total Drama contestant. And I just hope she gets more recognition for being a good finalist in the near future. Okay, now, before we get to the top 5, this next character, I actually had a hard time placing. Like, there were points in where I actually switched up Zoe, Lightning, and this character. And for a short, brief time, I actually had him in my top 5. Hell, he was the original number 5 until I rewatched number 5's original ending. Now, why is this character so hard to place? Well, it's because the negatives and positives both equal each other out. And that character is Duncan from Total Drama Action. Now, first things first, and I mean this, Duncan's endgame isn't really the smartest, and that has to do with some faulty writing. You know, I know they wanted to actually make Courtney seem more like a villain, something that gets out the love triangle, but they could have done that and still made Duncan out to be a good competitor. And now on to his game. I actually feel like Duncan's pre-merge is one of the best pre-merges I have ever seen. I mean, the dude rarely attended an elimination. His team only lost 3 members, one of which quit the game. And he was probably the best player on his team. I mean, Harold is a close second, yes, but Duncan did more in challenges and even helped his team to the win on more occasions. The War Movie Challenge, the first challenge, the Doctor Challenge, even though that was more Lashana, the Prisoner Challenge, even though he did nothing in that one, and even the Surfer Challenge. Duncan did a lot more for his team than people remember. And that's because whenever I remember his game, I don't remember his merge. I remember his pre-merge. But onto his merge, Duncan's flaws decided to come back and bite him. And the flaw was named Courtney. Where Duncan was meant out to look more weak. And it's kind of weird saying that for a character like Duncan, making him out to look weak. Duncan was in the bottom 2 more times in the season than any character. Apart from Courtney, but that was just in the last 2 episodes, and she had invincibility throughout episodes. Duncan was in the bottom 2 3 times in a row. But onto his finale game, and it's a mixed bag. This is kind of why he would have been in the top 5, but also why he could have been lower than Lightning and even lower than Zoe on a certain occasion. As he wasn't really the strongest player going into the finale. I dare say that he was weaker than Owen, kinda. But at the finale, Duncan was leading the charge. And I dare say in a jury vote, not counting everyone who voted, but just people who made the merge, I think Duncan wins. I mean, apart from Justin's vote and Lindsay's vote, the votes he can get are Harold, who could flip on him, Owen, and even Lashana. I dare say that Duncan, in a normal vote, in a normal scenario, would beat Beth in a vote. Now, how is he overall? He's one of the best finalists. I prefer his over Beth any day. And even though back when I first started watching Total Drama, I did prefer Beth's ending, when I went back and rewatched the whole season, I prefer his. And why isn't he in the top 5? Well, I already said earlier, his negatives and positives both equal each other out. But that doesn't stop him from being a good character who made a good finale. And here we are, the top 5. The finalists that I consider the best of the best. So far, it all depends on who wins the next season, next year. But with that, the top 5 will include 2 finalists, each from the same season, 1 back-to-back, and 1 you guys may be surprised about. Now, this one, to me, I had a hard time placing. Hell, for a short period of time, he was actually at number 6, and Duncan was actually at number 5. And that character is Alejandro. Alejandro, for me, is the most controversial finalist. Well, either that one or the next one in my eyes. But that's kind of why I have him this high. He is the first ever villain to make it to the end. And I honestly think that besides All-Stars, World Tour was the best way to do it. I mean, you have here a person who ran the game, took down some of the series' best heroes, with the cause of Team Victory going extinct, and worked on every single female in the game. Except for Gwen. That's something I actually found quite weird. He didn't work on Gwen. But moving on, Alejandro's game is easily one of the best I've seen. I mean, okay, I get Heather won the season, but if we were to say what the best player of Total Drama World Tour was, it was Alejandro. Alejandro's game is one of the main reasons why he's at number 5. I can't put him any higher, though. Well, mainly because I prefer the other finalists more. But also because his finale leaves us with a bad taste. Which is why he's this high, but it's also a negative at the same time. But as it stands, Alejandro is the best villain to ever make to the finale. He's over Mal, he's over Lightning, and as the best villain in the entire series, I dare say that he is more than deserving of this spot. Alejandro, as a player, I respect you, but I prefer the other finalists more. Okay, number 4 is one I'm pretty sure no one expected to be this high. Unless you've been paying attention after the other finalist. But to me, I've always preferred this finalist over the other one. And that is Cameron from Total Drama Revenge of the Island. Now, okay, I know Cameron is not the best player from TD ROTI. I get that. But, to me, his game is a lot more impressive than meets the eye. Now, for many good guy finalists, they either receive fewer votes than the other one, attend fewer eliminations, and, of course, get massive plot armor. Or get 0 votes. Cameron's case, he has a little bit of everything here. That should make him a bad finalist. But to me, that actually improves him as a character. Cameron's arc throughout this season is a bubble boy coming out into the world, experiencing things in the world for the first time. He's never really had outdoor relationships, never really had outdoor friendships apart from his mom. And that's kind of why I have him this high, because of his story arc. But not only that, his finale performance is one of the best, as he turns into Iron Man. Now, I'm not being biased, but that's still pretty cool. But besides that, his game is easily one of the best. And if I had to compare his physical game to Lightning's, Lightning wins. But if I had to compare his immunity game to Lightning, Cameron easily beats him. I mean, the dude outsmarts Lightning multiple different ways. And he even beats Heather, one of the series' best villains. Cameron's ending is also the one I always prefer. I mean, I talked about this a little bit in Alejandro's, but the main reason why I talked about it a little is for this one. I prefer different endings in comparison to the characters. I mean, I love the characters, but I love the endings even more. And to me, even though it's a toss-up between Lightning and Cameron, if I had to choose, I would prefer Cameron's. And to me, he's at number 4 for this reason. He doesn't make the top 5 though, just because the top 3 are legendary, honestly. And yes, I did mean top 3 back there. But as it stands, Cameron is currently the most overhated finalist in my eyes. And I feel like his game should get another look at. And here we are, the top 3. This journey has been, it's been kind of long. Now, these next 3 finalists are the finalists that I always go back to. Whenever I think of finalists, I think of their ending, especially the top 2. Now, I say especially the top 2 because this next finalist was originally going to be lower if you would have asked me years back. But with a rewatch and taking a look at her story, I've grown to appreciate her ending. And it's put her above the best villain, the most overhated contestant, and one of the more legendary finalists in Duncan. And that finalist is Gwen from Total Drama Island. Now, if you were to ask me in my universe, Gwen wins All-Stars. I mean, hands down. She's that legendary of a player. But as time has gone on, I've appreciated Gwen's ending a lot more than you think. I mean, it's obvious that Gwen's story is what the main focus of that episode is. That and Owen trying to win. I mean, throughout the season, we've had the main characters consist of Duncan, Heather, Gwen, and Owen. And sometimes Lashana and Jeff. It all depends on what team we're focusing on. But for me, Gwen's ending feels more like the ending of the story. It feels like the initial ending of the season. As Gwen has moved forth in the story, it just set up the build-up to her winning. But why do I have her at number 3? Well, not only do I prefer her gameplay over a few others, I also believe that if it was to come down to a vote, she could win. But I also have her at number 3 because I prefer the other 2 more. But number 3 from, let's say, number 8 is a huge improvement from my original rankings. I mean, Gwen's story is the main focus, and a unique thing about her ending is depending on which one you get, the mood changes. Owen's winning song doesn't come in instantly, and we get more focus on the relationship between Gwen and Trent. But in Owen's ending, it comes in right away. That is a key detail that I'm surprised I didn't notice the first time. But, as I said, as it stands, Gwen's ending is at number 3. And, unfortunately, it's all downhill from here for Gwen. But good thing, we got her top moment right here. Here we are, the top 2. That's kind of something dumb for me to say because I've already said for the top 5 and the top 3. But whenever I think of season finalists, I always think of these 2. It doesn't matter if it's if it's official finalists, or if it's another person's ranking list, these two are always going to be in my top 2. That is depending on who wins the next season. But I always think of these two. And it was really hard for me to choose who should win, or who should be at number 1. Because I love both of these finalists. I think that their character arcs in the series are pivotal for each season. And even though they each have their ups and downs, and their bad seasons and their good seasons, I always look back at these characters and I always think, they were good finalists. But after a whole road trip of thinking and rewatching both of their seasons that they won, I've come to this. The second best finalist in Total Drama history is Owen from Total Drama Island. This was the hardest decision of my channel so far. Whenever I think of a finalist, I do think of Owen. Not for his game, not for his initial episodes he made it, but just the fact that he is the first ever winner. To me, Owen had a really good game in Total Drama Island. I mean, he was never really a huge threat to go home, but he was always willing to do his best in the challenges. Not only that, but he was able to get his way through the game. He was cool with practically everyone and hardly received any votes. Even in the episodes on where he messed up. Now, granted, that could be down to plot armor, but still. Not only that, but his last few episodes he appeared in, he got to show off his strengths. Especially in I Trouble Dog Dare You, where if it was a normal immunity challenge, he would be safe. And it would be down to his choice on who wins. But why is he at number 2 instead of number 1? Well, I prefer the other character over him. Owen's status as a player and him in Island easily puts him at number 2. It was hard for me to choose between these next two, but to me, Owen goes as the runner-up of the finalist rankings. And here we are. I shouldn't say it, but I think it's pretty obvious who number 1 is. It's Heather from Total Drama World Tour. She was always going to be either 1 or 2, and I'm just going to be honest there. There was no denying it. I mean, Alejandro may have had the better game this season, but there's no way you can take away this win from Heather. The whole build-up of Total Drama World Tour and why Total Drama World Tour is at number 3 is the build-up for Heather to be the one to take down Alejandro. But that's what makes both of their endings some of the best in the series. Because they could either go the route of having Alejandro destroy Heather's dream when Heather seems like she has finally done it, or have Heather be the one to finally knock Alejandro off. And to me, I've always preferred this ending. Especially when I used to skim through. And back then, I was never really a fan of Heather. But, as time has gone on, I've preferred Heather's ending over a lot more. I've always liked Heather's development as a character with my first initial rewatch. And she went from the main bad guy to kind of a filler character, but still in the limelight, to a protagonist. To back to her original roots, but that's for another day. Heather's arc in World Tour is what gives her the spot. And not only that, Heather receives no votes until the merge. And no, I'm not counting in the non-elimination in the Amazon, because Chris even said it's a non-elimination. Heather's game, while it's not as good as her performance in Island, is still at its best in this season. She's in good with the majority. And her arc with Alejandro fits perfectly here. Especially in the last 5 episodes. AKA The Merge. So we get to see her love and hate come out. And it is hilarious to watch. And it all leads to easily the most satisfying conclusion that no one else, except maybe Ezekiel, or Tyler, or maybe even Noah, could have done. Heather being able to win a season, and for it to be against the main bad, coming full circle, is the exact way that they should have done it, and they should have given the win to Heather. And for that reason, she is my favorite finalist in total drama history so far. Congratulations, Heather. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. This took a surprisingly long amount of time. I just hope that you guys enjoyed it. Now, I don't know when my next video is going to be released with my scheduling, but what I do know is I've had this idea in mind for a long time. So, I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.